Oprah Winfrey built a 50-year empire on never flinching, and one Vanity Fair question about Meghan Markle had her squirming in her chair like a witness under oath. That Montecito garden session was hiding something in almost every frame, and in 2026, the receipts finally caught up with both of them. Stick with me on this one, because once you see what was buried in that footage, you're not going to watch that interview the same way again. Quick favor before we open the vault. Do the one thing Oprah never did that afternoon and commit to a follow-up. Hit like and subscribe to the Star Report, because around here, we don't stop asking questions. The win-win admission.
As she reveals the interview, she hit back at suggestions that the couple didn't know what they were going to be asked. She then admitted that she had told Prince Harry and Meghan that this was all about a win-win. This is gonna be good for you guys, and it's gonna be good for me. So they sat down to film for the 3.5 hours, and Oprah thought that her career legacy was set.
For 5 years, that interview got sold to the public as an act of journalism. A brave truth-teller giving a suffering Duchess a safe place to finally speak. Then Oprah sat down with Vanity Fair and torched her own cover story in a single sentence. She admitted she'd told Harry and Meghan beforehand that the whole thing was a win-win, good for them and good for her.
I'm gonna try to cover everything. This interview took 3.5 hours. And as is always the case for me, I was just trying to carefully go through everything that had come up in the past.
No, you weren't. You were just admitting that you wanted it to be a win. You weren't talking about it being a win for the truth, or a win for journalism, or a win for the British royal family. You were talking about it being a win for Harry and Meghan and for you.
Read that back slowly. A journalist doesn't promise the subject of victory before the cameras roll. A business partner does. And once you hear it that way, you can't unhear it. Notice what was missing from that pitch too. A win for the truth never made the list. A win for the audience never made the list. Just the 3 people splitting the proceeds. Meghan needed her battered image run through the most powerful washing machine in American media, and Oprah needed the royal scoop she'd been hunting for decades. Each woman handed the other precisely what she came for, then dressed the transaction up as a confession. Which, I mean, respect the hustle, but let's call it what it is. The tears, the gasps, the dramatic pauses. All of it pre-sold as mutually beneficial content before a single question landed. 3.5 hours of raw footage went into that garden. What came out was whatever served the arrangement, trimmed by the one woman in the deal who controlled the scissors. Funny how that works. And once the arrangement got admitted out loud, one gesture from the original broadcast suddenly looked very, very different. The finger on the lips. Everyone remembered the line, "Were you silent or were you silenced?" But the hand deserved a second look. As Oprah delivered it, she raised one finger to her mouth, a rehearsed little flourish attached to a question she already knew the answer to, because of course she did. That gesture went viral within minutes of the broadcast. It got memed, mimicked, and printed on merchandise, and it did more heavy lifting for the silencing narrative than any actual evidence ever managed.
Silent or were you silenced?
The latter.
Okay.
She's
Very
embarrassed.
nice. I don't think I've done it since. I don't know where the hell that came from. Whoop. Okay. I wanted to be clear. Was she silenced? Were people telling her not to talk? That's why I said that. I said it for clarification.
In 2026, Oprah claimed the moment was journalistic rigor. Okay, sure. She said she only asked it for clarification, so nobody could later twist what Meghan really meant. Except a clarifying journalist asks who did the silencing. When did they say it? In what room? With what words? She asked none of it. She teed up the soundbite, mimed the hush, and let an accusation against a 1,000-year-old institution float off unchallenged into 49 million living rooms. 49 million. Let that number sit for a second. The palace courtiers reportedly said they'd offered Meghan help whenever she needed it. That version never made it to air because it clarified far too much. Convenient that. Her defense collapsed even faster the moment a camera caught her reaction to seeing that clip again. The squirm. Vanity Fair played Oprah her own most famous royal moment back to her face, and the Queen of Composure visibly squirmed in her seat. She waved the whole thing away like a fly at a picnic. She said she didn't know where the gesture came from and swore she hadn't done it since. Think about the absurdity of that answer for a second. No, really, sit with it. A broadcaster with 50 years of tape claimed her single most viral interview moment was an unexplainable accident that possessed her hand for 3 seconds. This was a woman who'd stared down presidents, cult leaders, and Lance Armstrong without so much as a blink. One replay of herself nodding along to Meghan Markle, and suddenly she couldn't sit still, which, honestly, tells you everything. Here was the juicy part, though. Oprah controlled that Vanity Fair conversation the way she controlled everything, which meant she could have declared the topic off limits before the first camera rolled. She chose to revisit it anyway because the legacy needed laundering more than her comfort needed protecting. A woman who spent 5 decades deciding what stayed in the edit suddenly found herself inside somebody else's cut. And judging by the wriggling, she hated every second of the experience she'd sold to 1,000 guests before her. Poetic, right? And to understand why the legacy needed laundering, the story had to rewind about 30 years. The 30-year chase.
She was gunning for this interview. She started poaching Harry and Meghan about a sit-down 6 months before they were wed. She was desperate to sit down with Princess Diana, kissing her butt, sitting across from her at Kensington Palace, trying to get Diana to give her an exclusive. Diana lovingly wrote her a note that was like, no way.
Oprah wanted a royal the way collectors want a first edition. She courted Princess Diana personally, sat across from her at Kensington Palace, and pitched the exclusive of the century directly to the most famous woman on earth. Diana sent back a gracious little no and kept her dignity in one piece. That refusal aged like fine wine, and spoiler, Meghan's didn't.
Wanted to sit down with the Prince and Princess of Wales, William and Catherine, and they said, absolutely no way, that's beneath us. She got Fergie, which is convenient because I think Harry and Meghan are on the Fergie level. But this was a huge win for Oprah Winfrey, who'd been chasing legitimate members of the British royal family for an interview for decades.
Years later, Oprah tried again with William and Catherine. Same answer, politely delivered, door firmly shut. The royals with actual standing could smell the circus rolling in from a mile away. They had 1,000 years of institutional dignity on the shelf and zero interest in trading it for daytime ratings. Smart, ruthless, but smart, which left exactly one royal desperate enough to say yes. Not the people's princess, not the future king and queen, the one the palace was quietly relieved to wave off at the airport. Commentators eventually filed the couple on the Fergie shelf, the tier of royalty available for hire. 30 years of stalking the palace gates, and the only catch was the one the firm couldn't wait to release. Brutal, sure. Inaccurate, not really. So Meghan wasn't the scoop of a lifetime. She was the consolation prize, and both women understood that walking into the garden, nobody in that garden was operating under any illusions. Not Oprah, not Meghan, not anyone holding a camera. Which explained the strangest feature of the broadcast itself. 3.5 hours of tape, and somehow not one hard question survived the edit. The questions that never came.
You watched it, the more you thought, Oprah, come on, that's not true. Challenge that. Ask her. If she says there's racists in the royal family, who are they? It was a remarkably uninquisitive interview, wasn't it?
Even broadly sympathetic commentators eventually said it out loud. The interview was remarkably uninquisitive. An allegation of racism inside the royal family landed on the biggest platform on earth, and the obvious follow-up never arrived. Who said it? When exactly? In which conversation? Witnessed by whom? The claim just hung there, gathering headlines while the specifics stayed conveniently vaporous. Nobody chased it. Nobody ever does, apparently.
Journalistic integrity was absolutely shot to shit. It's the best way I can explain it. It was shocking. Even that bit, were you silent or were you silenced? For Meghan to say the latter, who silenced you? How did they silence you? Are you saying the royal family got an NDA? Did they threaten you? How could they stop you speaking? Because I tell you what, you didn't stop speaking the entire time you were in the royal family, so how is it they now managed to silence you?
Same treatment for the silencing story. How did they silence her? Was there an NDA? A threat? A memo? A human being enforcing this? Nothing. And the cruel punchline wrote itself, because Meghan never actually stopped talking during her entire royal tenure. Engagement interviews, documentaries, friends briefing magazines on her behalf. The silenced Duchess had a broader media footprint than most sitting politicians. One royal watcher put it plainly on air. Nobody managed to stop her speaking the entire time she wore the title, so the mechanics of this alleged muzzle remained a genuine mystery of engineering. Nobody's ever explained how. Oprah didn't forget how to interview that day. Interrogation was bad for the win-win, so the sharpest talker on television simply left her tools in the car. Meanwhile, the timing of the broadcast quietly revealed what both women thought of their audience. The lockdown optics.
They heard this old clip from 2021 where basically during the pandemic, when people are locked in their homes, they're struggling to pay their bills, their businesses have been shut down, Oprah, Meghan Markle, and Prince Harry sat around in a massive mansion, I believe owned by Rob Lowe, and complained about how hard their lives were. Now, this is when Meghan Markle stopped being relatable to anybody. People are locked in their homes. People are dying. Their family members are on life support, right, on incubators, and she's sitting there complaining how hard it was for her to live in a palace and be in the royal family eating crumpets and scones.
March 2021. People locked inside their homes. Businesses closed down. Relatives were on ventilators, and savings evaporated by the week. And onto their screens floated three of the wealthiest people alive, arranged in a borrowed Montecito mansion reportedly belonging to Rob Lowe, explaining how difficult palace life had been. Crumpets, scones, and suffering. I mean, really, nobody on that lawn read the room. Not one person.
Nothing's more compelling than watching a 40-year-old man complain that his allowance has been cut off.
By daddy.
I mean,
by daddy.
Daddy cut off his allowance at 40 years old. Daddy's no longer putting gas in the Range Rover. Daddy's no longer paying the phone bill. Oh gosh, my sympathies are with you, child.
Yeah.
But you know,
Heartbreaking.
The centerpiece grievance came from a 40-year-old man announcing that his father cut off his allowance. Commentators had a field day with it. Daddy stopped filling the Range Rover, one quipped, and the sympathy died right there on live air. That was the precise moment relatability packed its bags and left the Markle residence. Not a scandal, not a lawsuit. Just millions of struggling viewers simultaneously realizing the victims owned more square footage than their entire street. Reports later suggested even Oprah clocked it after the fact, watching the debunkings pile up and realizing she'd been played by two guests she thought she was playing. A boss recognizes a hustle eventually, especially one she'd have run better herself. If this breakdown is scratching the itch, be a pal and tap that like button. Unlike a certain garden interview, the algorithm actually responds to honest feedback. And the claims Oprah waved straight through without blinking start with a bet that nobody in America owned a history book. The rule book she skipped.
Want him to be a prince or a princess, not knowing what the gender would be, which would be different from protocol, and that he wasn't going to receive security.
What?
It was really hard.
Meghan presented Archie's missing prince title as a targeted strike against her son, wrapped in the darkest possible implication about the motive. It was surgical. She knew titles and security read as the two glittering perks of royal life, and she knew the average American viewer had no clue how either actually worked. That knowledge gap was the whole play, and she played it perfectly. What she was hiding was a boring document from 1917. King George V's convention handed automatic titles only to children and grandchildren of the sovereign, and Archie, a great-grandchild through the second son, sat plainly outside the line. No vendetta required. Just basic math. Boring, but true. Stranger still, a courtesy title existed and sat there waiting for him. Her own representatives turned it down at his birth, citing a wish for a more private life. So the family that supposedly robbed her son of a title had actually watched her decline one. And the security claim wasn't any better, since protection only ever went to working royals, a lesson Beatrice and Eugenie learned the expensive way back in 2011. Even the Queen's own granddaughter Zara went entirely without. A dry legal convention older than everyone in that garden got repackaged as a personal wound, and the repackaging depended entirely on an ocean's worth of ignorance about how any of it worked. A pretty safe bet when you're talking about the internal paperwork of a foreign monarchy. The conspiracy required an audience that would never check. Her next claim required an audience that would never check her own website. The search history denial.
Never looked up my husband online. I just didn't feel a need to because everything that I needed to know he was sharing with me, right?
She told Oprah she never once looked Harry up online. A blank slate in a sundress, wandering innocently into a monarchy with no idea what any of it meant. Her own blog begged to differ, loudly, with receipts. The TIG carried years of royal content in its archive. Detailed commentary on Kate Middleton's wedding. Entire posts weighing royal fantasy against royal reality. A giddy account of her pinch-me moment interviewing a real-life princess. A princess. Interesting foreshadowing that. Then her childhood friends arrived carrying the VHS tapes. Diana's wedding, watched together as kids. Diana's biography, handed over and read. And the detail that deserved its own true crime episode. Diana's exact favorite perfume, researched, tracked down, and deliberately worn on early dates with Diana's son. That went beyond preparation. That was set dressing. Meghan arrived at the audition with the source material memorized and the costume already fitted. She did her homework, I'll give her that. And the costume changes kept on coming, because the trapped hostage routine came with a paper trail of its own. The passport problem. She claimed the institution confiscated her passport, her driver's license, and her keys the moment she joined. A captive Duchess, sealed inside a gilded cage, stripped of basic autonomy. Cinematic stuff, genuinely gripping, truly Oscar-worthy, also flatly impossible to square with her calendar. Because then came the itinerary. Ibiza with Elton John, a six-figure Manhattan baby shower courtesy of Serena Williams, courtside at the US Open, a glamorous wedding in Rome, a vacation in Nice, Canada for Thanksgiving. Every single one of those trips required presenting a valid passport to a border officer, 6 separate times, minimum, across 4 countries. Either the world's customs agencies waved through an undocumented Duchess on pure vibes, or the cage came furnished with a private jet and a permanently open gate. Pick your conspiracy. You can't gaslight a border stamp. It doesn't have feelings to manage. The hostage logged more international mileage in captivity than most people manage in a decade of freedom. Her frequent flyer account testified against her, one customs stamp at a time. And nobody in that garden thought to mention the contradiction, because mentioning it would have punctured the entire captivity arc the afternoon was built around. She rewrote geography without blinking. Then she reached for something bolder and rewrote her own bloodline, the only child routine.
Changed her last name back to Markle in, I think she was in her early 50s at that time, only when I started dating Harry. So I think that says enough.
With a perfectly straight face, Meghan described growing up as an only child. She claimed nearly 2 decades of estrangement from her half-sister Samantha, then added the twist of the knife. Samantha supposedly only reclaimed the Markle surname in 2016 to surf the royal wave. It was a tidy story that recast her entire family as opportunistic strangers, and it existed to answer a question the whole world had been quietly asking since the wedding, when her side of the chapel held exactly one relative. Samantha responded the way lawyers dream about, with paperwork, receipts, again.
Markle's always been my name.
A court petition for the name change, dated December 1997, nearly 20 years before Harry existed in the picture. A 2008 college diploma printed with the name Samantha M. Markle and the kill shot. A photograph of Meghan standing beside Samantha at that very 2008 graduation, smiling, present, and demonstrably not estranged. The 19-year timeline dissolved on contact with one JPEG, one single photo. She'd gambled millions of viewers on the assumption that nobody in her family kept receipts. Her family kept entire albums, which set the table for the grand finale, a poverty plea delivered from paradise. The poverty performance.
Your family cut you off?
Yeah, in the first quarter of 2020.
Harry confirmed the family cut him off in early 2020. He shared this hardship from the manicured grounds of a $14 million Montecito estate, which took a certain kind of nerve. Honestly, the audacity is staggering. What the framing hid was the cushion underneath him. Diana's inheritance ran to several million. A royal source confirmed Charles personally covered roughly $2.5 million more in transition security. Paparazzi even photographed their protection officers fetching coffee and sandwiches in Canada during this supposedly desperate stretch. Highly trained police officers running lunch orders.
From my perspective, all I needed was enough money to be able to pay for security, to keep my...
Then arrived the justification for the streaming deals. He only signed with Netflix, he explained, to afford enough security to keep his family safe. 9 figures, for bodyguards, from a man sitting on his mother's fortune, married to a woman with her own Hollywood earnings. Nobody signs a $100 million content deal to survive. They sign it to build a rival court in California, and 5 years of programming decisions confirmed exactly which one this was. The same interview also painted her as defenseless against the press, which industry insiders found hilarious. A former magazine editor claimed Meghan ran 3 PR firms simultaneously back in 2017 with a monthly tabloid quota attached. While a royal reporter confirmed the palace press team repeatedly killed false stories on her behalf, the silenced victim owned the microphone factory. Just think about that. So what did the whole arrangement actually buy? Somebody fetch a calculator, because the final tally was wild. The 5-year scoreboard. With love, Meghan crawled in at number 383 on Netflix's own chart, reportedly beaten by reruns of her old lawyer show. The festive special opened, according to the coverage, at a flat 0%. Not low. 0. Her team reportedly went after a judge for daring to describe her as royalty. Months later, she fronted a cooking challenge literally titled Fit for a Duchess. Furious about the tiara in April, renting it out for ratings by July. Pick one, honey. Netflix wound down the brand deal. Approval numbers scraped along near 20%, the lowest of her public life. A petition asking the couple to relocate sailed past 45,000 signatures, and biographer Angela Levin claimed she got booed in the glossy little town she moved to specifically for the neighbors. Harry didn't do any better in the courts, where a judge reportedly tossed his entire case against a newspaper publisher, all 97 complaints of it. He responded by attacking the judge, which a former justice secretary called over the top and unacceptable. Old friends reportedly slammed their wallets shut too, with one alleged response from the south of France amounting to 5 brutal words: not an ATM, ice, cold. And Oprah, true to a lifetime of immaculate exits, quietly edited herself out of the wreckage before the stain could reach her hem. The same trick she pulled after every protege turned toxic, executed one more time, in her best frock. Iconic, honestly, in the worst way. The only people who left this saga with their dignity intact were the ones the interview was built to torch. A silent queen who never once hit back, and Diana, who took one look at Oprah 3 decades earlier and sent the circus packing. 2 dealmakers shook hands in a rented garden and sold the world a confession. 5 years later, neither woman wanted her fingerprints found anywhere near it. Tell me which of these 12 wrecked you the most in the comments, and if you're not subscribed to the Star Report yet, well, now you know why you should be. Seriously, what are you waiting for?